Symbolic surplus. Social composition as an obstacle or catalyst for workers' voice is the subject of my presentation, and I'll discuss data on the workers' social composition in platform-mediated food delivery work, and which is, as I argue, on one hand an obstacle, and on the other hand a catalyst for workers' voice. First of all, a brief look on worker silence. So the fragmentation of platform workers, since they are highly fragmented, and workers' voice in platform labor is rather unlikely, and because platform workers are legally, spatially, organizationally, technologically, and socially fragmented. And however, platform labor is one of the most vibrant and exciting areas of labor organizing, and this is especially the case in Western Europe, and it's especially the case in food delivery work. So the reason for this is that the fragmentation here is pretty much less pronounced. So the work takes place in a limited urban space with places where the riders meet and exchange, and also the riders, they're kind of uniform with these standardized clothes and backpacks, and which allows their identification. But however, little attention is paid till now to the specific social composition of the riders, which favors the emergence of discontent and protests, and is at the same time a challenge, and which will be the focus here. And what I did was I did 35 semi-structured interviews in 7 cities with different actors in this field. I did a quantitative online survey of German riders, and I did ethnography. So I worked as a rider on 2 different platforms, and I shadowed other riders during their work, and I also analyzed 6 different chat groups and forums of the riders. And before analyzing the social composition, first of all, I have to point out that the platform, they kind of need workers at specific times in specific places. And this is something which can be quite difficult, since one manager told me that the average length of stay of that there was an average length of stay of 2 months. And some of the platforms at some point, they were also recruiting in refugee centers. So the platforms, they must attract workers to low-paid, precarious work at unfavorable times. And they do this with using 2 recruitment strategies. The first one is they promise a low threshold to flexible work, which is Bugenhold calls something like this, and following an economy of need. So what they do with these platforms, they kind of, for instance, they promise flexibility and independence. And as one writer here told me, I came to Germany, I needed a job immediately, and my German is not very good, and this was the first job I could start immediately. And the other strategy, recruitment strategy from these platforms, is that they promise free, active, and kind of cool work. And so the platforms kind of, they adopt this, what I would call symbolic surplus of the bicycle career subculture. However, they do not adopt the critical, the political aspect. They only use the style. So because bike messaging, it kind of has a specific message of culture with a characteristic style. So it emphasizes alternative, hedonistic, political left-wing values. It has its own magazines, music, championships, and also Hollywood movies and so on. And you can see this in these few quotes from some writers. As one writer said, I don't see myself cleaning other people's homes. Delivering them food is not great either, but at least I'm free and there's no boss up my back, and it's way cooler being something like a messenger. And another one said, and I really like this feeling of being free and roaming the city and be part of that culture and hanging out with everybody after the shift. So I decided to start this kind of work. And also one said, because I also ride brakeless, so riding the bike without brakes, it makes me feel like this typical, the fixed bike messenger who works brakeless. So as I argue, the rider's social composition, it kind of reflects this recruitment strategy, and it acts as an obstacle and a catalyst of workers' voice. And you can see this because the riders can be categorized into messengers on the one hand and dependents on the other hand. So, and I will now turn to the social composition, because generally the riders, they are relatively young on average. In my example, they are 29, and most of them are male, 86%, and they're kind of rather well educated. And as just recently Julia Chor and others pointed out, it is crucial how dependent workers are on platform labor. So you can see this in these answers of the sample to these questions. More than 40% work a second job, more than 50% are looking for another job, and only one-third, almost one-third are thinking about doing food delivery in 5 years. Most of them hope to do another job, and 50% provide for others with their income. So, and another question was that why did you choose this job? So when asked why they did choose this job, several answers were possible. 85% answered that they just need a job, obviously. More than 50% said the easy access was crucial, so the low threshold. And one-third was specifically interested in working as a career. And this is the group I would identify as messengers who are interested in the symbolic surplus of being a messenger. So, and when you now look at the data again, the majority of the messengers did not have a second job, but many were looking for another. So the longer they worked at food delivery, the more they were looking. And almost no one plans to do food delivery in 5 years. So for some it's just a gig. Some are students, some plan to go into traditional messenger work, and so on. And no one of these messengers, and no one provides for others with their income. And also very important, the messengers, they worked on average 14 hours less per month than the dependents. So, kind of to summarize this part, the riders who choose this job because of the symbolic surplus, the messengers, they're pretty much less dependent on this income, and they have more exit options. But usually the symbolic surplus, it's disappointed here, as the quote is, it's only fake. At Fedora, they pretend that everyone's a trendy messenger. They hand out stylish messenger style hats, but in the end, it's a dull job with no freedom for a huge company. And another one said, we're no more individual and free than someone on the assembly line. They just tell you you're a cool messenger. And so there is discontent, but the messengers can and do regularly use the exit option, and they are thus not available for voice. And so this is kind of an obstacle for workers' voice. But at the same time, the social composition, especially these messengers, they're a catalyst for workers' voice, as we can see here. Ask if there was a reason, for protest. 86% in general of the riders, and all the messengers, of course, they said yes. And for which the reasons differ. So for many, it was the wages. Also for some of the messengers, but not all. So this was not that distinct. But working time and the control of the labor process was the reason for protest, especially for the messengers, but not for the majority of the riders. And the other way around concerning payment for work equipment. So which was not very important for the messengers, but for the most of the, I call it, dependents. And additionally, messengers were central actors of all protests I analyzed and I were part of. So, and they kind of brought their political experience and contacts with them. So here, as one quote, I came to work as a career, but it turned out as a new political project next to the others I do already. And for some, the protests were especially important. Next quote, I thought to get into this job to be also part of the struggle campaign with the old 70s autonomous idea to work within the factories, to organize the factory workers and so on. And also the chat, in the chat of the riders where they organize work council elections, two riders wrote, we have some riders who would like to proclaim the revolution directly, particularly those who do not stay long. And then there are others for whom you first have to create awareness of work councils, protests, etc. And the other one answers, right, mate, and these are the very people who need works council most urgently. So to conclude, first of all, messengers, as you can see here, they often initiated protests in all the analyzed cases. So it was the messengers who initiated these protests, but they rarely established long-term representational structures, because usually they then they stopped working at the courier. And they often had political experience and context which they used for their struggles in the food delivery work. Something we also know from Italy. So to conclude, platform, they use this kind of, we call it symbolic surplus of the messenger subculture for the recruitment, but they do not fulfill its political demands. And you can see this recruitment strategy in the social composition of the writers. It is split in two. On the one hand, you have the dependents. On the other hand, you have the messengers, as I've shown. And the latter, the messengers, they often initiate workers' voice and thus act as a catalyst. But as I showed, at the same time, they have many exit options. Many exit options are available to them, so that they do not participate in the long-term establishment of representation, which is a problem and an obstacle for workers' voice. So thank you very much for your attention. And here is the literature I used, and it's already out. And yeah, thank you.